One of the challenges today in audio is how to get Gen Z, that generation that has grown up with everything in the palm of their hand on their smartphone, to appreciate the subtle joys of high fidelity sound. Well, NAD may have met that challenge with its C700V2 BluOS streaming amplifier. For the Absolute Sound, I'm John Quain.
Je m'appelle Richard Césari, j'ai 63 ans. J'ai commencé dans ce métier, j'avais 18 ans. J'ai commencé dans ce métier-là vraiment par passion de la musique et par passion du matériel haute fidélité aussi. Et qui a une notoriété, je pense, assez importante dans le monde de la hi-fi. Pas du tout de blabla marketing, c'est vraiment pas mon fort. Et qui veulent vraiment avoir un système à la maison qui les replonge au cœur de la musique qu'ils aiment.
The NAD C700V2 packs an awful lot of components into something that's about the size of, well, a cookie tin. It's about 8 by 10 inches, weighs about 10 pounds, yet it has enough flexibility, enough components in it to be the start of a good stereo system and also room for expansion. It has an amplifier, an integrated amp. It has a streaming system with the BluOS software operating system to expand to other speakers and components. It even has a phono stage so you can connect a turntable to it as well. And it's all for about $15.99 is the list price. That's a reasonable price if you consider the sophisticated amplification that NAD has put into this and the thought and flexibility with the BluOS system and this streaming amplifier. The NAD C700V2 comes with a lot packed into this little box and comes with a remote control. So let's go over the basic specifications of it first, just so you know what it contains and what you're getting. It has the integrated amp, and that has 80 watts a side, delivered into 4 or 8 ohms. And the amplifier is what they call a digital hybrid UCD amplifier. That's a universal Class D amplifier. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Don't get upset yet. It also has a total harmonic distortion plus noise of less than 0.04%, a specification that you expect to see in an amplifier of this quality. And it has some onboard DACs as well. It uses the ESS Sabre ES9028 DACs, Pro DACs. Now, those are DACs, the digital analog converters. You'll also see them in some outboard DACs as well. So they're well known in the industry and pretty predictable, and they have a predictable profile to work with. So all that's some established quality components in this system. You hook up a good pair of passive bookshelf speakers and you'll have yourself a very good start to a high quality audio system. But there's more, because it comes with the BluOS operating system. That's the software that uses. It connects to a smartphone. So a lot of the controls that you'll use on the C700V2 are all via your smartphone, even though you do get a remote control. It supports all the major file formats for lossless streaming. It has WAV, FLAC, and MQA support. So that gets you 24-bit sampling at about 192 kilohertz. So you're covered from most of the high-end audio streaming services. You don't have to worry about compatibility in that sense. So you get Qobuz and Tidal and Deezer, the main streamers. If you're not familiar with the BluOS operating system, it was started about 12 years ago, and it was seen to be basically an alternative to other multi-room wireless audio services and systems that weren't quite, well, what shall we say, the quality wasn't quite there. So the idea behind BluOS is it would bring high fidelity, near audiophile quality to people who wanted to set up wireless multi-room systems. and it's still growing strong. It has several different partners or brands that you may be familiar with that work with it, like the Canadian brand PSB Speakers. Many of us know pretty well. Dolly Speakers, Monitor Audio in the UK, Cyrus, a couple of brands like that. They all work with the BluOS operating system. In addition, what it allows you to do is to turn something like this little box into the centerpiece for a home theater surround sound system. You do that by wirelessly connecting a couple of rear channel speakers and a center channel speaker, and bingo, you've got yourself a nice compact home theater system. But it could do much more than that. If you want to set up multi-room systems, it can handle up to 60 different zones. So that should be enough for most people's mansions out there. It also has an HDMI eARC port in the back, so it could connect to your big screen TV. Also essential to do that. That's the highest bit rate you're going to get on HDMI right at the moment, so it also means the best sound quality you're going to get at it for that surround sound feel. In our test, it worked very well for that, and a very enjoyable experience as far as a modest home theater system went. In addition, there are lots of other ports and components in the back to hook up your regular other components, including a moving magnet phono stage. That's a little unusual in a box like this, so it means that you can connect your turntable without any additional hassle or trouble. That's also a good thing for the Gen Z people who are interested, because some of them are getting more and more into vinyl. So again, it can expand into those interests. I think it's a good idea. There's also optical and coax digital inputs. There's an input for a CD player, preamp outs, if you're using a headphone amp or something like that, and a USB port for an external storage device. In terms of wireless support, it does Bluetooth both ways. So if you're using it to send to, or using wireless in-ear monitors, or that, it also supports Bluetooth that way, as well as the aptX HD streaming format, which is less of a compromise, shall we say, than other wireless ways to transmit audio. And of course, there's Wi-Fi here as well. Only Wi-Fi 5 if you're looking for higher end, but still certainly serviceable for this product. So a little bit about amplification here. This does use a Class D amplifier. It's not a digital amplifier. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, I just thought that Class D was, for heat issues and space issues, so it's used in portable devices and other devices like that, and isn't really up to snuff and has other issues. That's really not true. It's all really in the nature of the design. And so there are many other companies that use high quality Class D amplifiers. Marantz springs to mind. Techniques is another one that springs to mind. And this one is developed by Hypex, the technology. So it actually does an excellent job getting rid of some of the issues that plagued some earlier or less expensive Class D amplifiers, like the signal to noise ratio. Not something you need to worry about here. Something that some audiophiles, we will sometimes hear a little bit of attenuation in the high end from a Class D amp. Some people actually like that sound. It's almost a little too precise times. People complain about antiseptic might be a word that some people use. On the other hand, some people love that precision in the high end. I personally did not hear any attenuation in the high end, or very much, from the C700 V2. I thought it was pretty well rounded in the high end, and it didn't seem thin out or flatten out at all. So you need to take that with a grain of salt when somebody says it's a Class D and they make a face. So now that we've got all the specifications and ins and outs of the C700 V2 out of the way, the question is, well, what does it sound like? And if there was one word to describe this streaming amplifier, that word would be limpid. It definitely has this clarity of sound. The presentation, the voicing is very excellent, especially in the higher upper range. I felt it kept returning to that sound no matter what kind of music I funneled through it. I found it pretty colorless. That's a feature, a characteristic that I appreciate. Some people want a little bit more rounded parts to it. part of that limpid and colorlessness of this amplifier. When you plug in an optical, you've got digital analog converters. The DACs are also, the ESS DACs are also known to be sort of colorless, don't provide a lot of warmth if that's what you're looking for. This is not going to sound like your favorite tube amplifier, that's for sure. What I really liked about the Precision was you got a separation of instruments in the soundstage, and also a clarity that you could follow one instrument for one song and another instrument for another. It's great if you are used to repetitive listenings and picking out different instruments to follow when you were auditioning some of your favorite music. So after weeks and weeks of living with the NAD C700 V2, listen to a lot of music, have a lot of examples of what it can sound like and what it brings out in the music. Of course, it'll depend on the speakers you're using and what their qualities are. An overly bright pair of speakers, it's not going to calm them down or take off some of those edges. And the same, it's got something that's a lot of bass, it's not going to switch over. But it does have certain characteristics that you will come to appreciate with this streaming amplifier. For example, off of Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow album, the favorite track is Constipated Duck, and something that it did very, very well was bring out the underlying bass lines by Phil Chen. He's the bassist on that record, and he also played with Rod Stewart and X-Doors members, but I digress. It's a lot of polyrhythmic things going on, and you really get to feel that bass line. And again, it shows that this amplifier's got some warmth to it as well, and a nice separation on the drums I found as well. If you go more traditional jazz, something from Tommy Flanagan, solo piano CD of his, it's come out and is also available on streaming services. The keys, to me, just floated across the sound stage, and it did put you as if you were almost sitting on the piano bench right next to him playing the song. He's passed away years ago, but I did have a chance to sit right there in front of him at the piano, and this does a great job of bringing, again, that transparency back to the music. For some rock, if you want some David Bowie, there was a lot of that going on over the auditions with this amplifier, station to station. Again, that word limpid and the clarity of it, really distinction between some of the pizzicato style guitar work that's on that record. And if anything, the vocals are sometimes, even though it's David Bowie, they're kind of buried in that mix. And the NAD C700 V2 kind of brings them out, brings them a little bit more alive. So again, it has some of that literally voicing that it helps with. And something completely different, Maya Beiser, a recent recording of Terry Riley's In C. She is a cellist and has taken Terry Riley's avant-garde raga influenced recording and done it with cello. Her own breath is used as percussion in some of this music. It's quite distinctive and really quite challenging for an audio system. I thought it really did bring those breathy vocals to life. They weren't buried, they weren't mushed together, and they did not seem harsh in any way. So now coming back to the Gen Z appreciation, people, most of us now, all of us now, are using apps to control pretty much everything. The NAD C700 V2 is no exception. To control this streaming amplifier, much of that work is done through the smartphone app. It works with Android phones and iPhones, of course, so that's all covered. I got a little grumpy with some apps if they're not just exactly perfect after 15 years of dealing with apps all the time. Maybe I'm just getting too grumpy. The BluOS app does everything it needs to do. Certainly, you can change all the settings, and tracks, and music sources, and everything you would expect out of an app. And as I said, there's also this remote control. You can't get as much fine-grained control out of this. It's mostly for volume jumping tracks and changing the brightness on this 5-inch screen on the streaming amplifier. But I did run into a couple of glitches with the app. One is, for example, when I wanted to change inputs. I found I had to back out several stages or screens till I got to the screen where I could change the inputs. I thought that should be better organized in the BluOS app. And also software upgrades. Everybody's familiar with software upgrades, whether you like it or not. Sometimes they happen automatically, interrupting your listening. Sometimes they don't. You are able to stop this. It doesn't automatically upgrade the software, so that's a good thing. But when I later went and thought, okay, let's upgrade it now, it's the end of the evening, I finished listening, and I couldn't do it on the app. I had to go back to the box and do it. There were some slight annoyances, as I said, but you should look at the app too. It does work with all the major phones, so that's not a problem. Also, it works with Alexa and Siri, so if you really want that kind of voice command and you've already got that in your home, you can use that as well. The bottom line for the NAD C700 V2 is that it does live up to the company's billing as a just add speakers stereo system. Of course, you can add a lot more to it, so that's a great thing, and the expandability, especially for somebody who's just getting into high quality audio equipment and wants better sound. This should appeal to that Gen Z person who's looking for a hassle-free way to improve the sonic accuracy and musicality of what they may be streaming now. Of course, make sure they get high resolution streaming service to go along with the NAD C700 V2. For the Absolute Sound, I'm John Quain. If you like this video, you appreciate these reviews, it's the obligatory please hit the thumbs up button on your screen. Also consider subscribing to the video channel and also to our newsletter. And yes, there is a print edition as well, all the Absolute Sound. Thanks for watching.